take a look at, this was the
Yeah.
wrap up, the final.
Yep, and this is a Breeze, and she...
So do you have them, like, yes?
Yeah.
No?
Actually, they all made an imprint, so that's what I was going to ask you, is that, and this isn't, like, all of them that I brought, but, so the kids that still can't do it, are Tyler.
Because you're missing kids out of...
Yeah, because I have so many kids gone.
Okay.
But from just, like, I don't have their final copy of this, but just from working with them.
That last list that we have. Okay, I have that down. Gavin, Misty, Delaney, Tyler.
Yes. And actually, Delaney made an imprint today. She was here, so I could pull her and I worked with her. It was pretty surface level, but it was an imprint, so she's one that I would put on the watch list.
Using text, like, looking at that piece.
Yep, she did. She said they did run, well, they put their shoes on and run, so that is why. So she kind of has it backwards, because in the book she says that they could sleep with their shoes off, but they needed to sleep with their clothes on, and the little boy had to sleep by the wall. And she said that, and for that she put him to the wall and left his clothes on, so that if they get caught, they will run, because to forget all the things that are just happening around them. So for her, that was, she didn't just put, oh, scary, or, oh, that's crazy, you know. So that was, and then she said that it says enemies are now friends. Everything has changed because of the fire. Well, it's not really the fire, it's because of the rioting, and not even because of that. Mom realized that she had never given the store owner a chance. So she's like half there, like everything has changed. Mom invites her over for tea after all of this.
Do you think, though, that for her this is...
I think for her that is like...
That was huge for her. That really led to...
She's tying things to the fire, so I guess I didn't know, like, I do think this one's an imprint, but this one, truly, Mom invited her because she just wasn't giving her a chance and was judging the store woman, because it says in there that I don't go to the store because we're not of the same. It's better if we buy from our own people, and that she speaks in words I can't even understand. But then she realizes in the end that it doesn't really matter that.
Right.
And so.
Do you think that would have happened if it wasn't for the fire?
No.
I mean, she used, this is from the text, right? So she used her evidence.
Yep, yeah.
Whether it's...
Because their building was on fire, so they had to evacuate. So yeah, it might be. For her, probably. That's probably huge thinking for her, because they evacuated the building because there was a fire from the rioting.
And that's why I was like, I mean, I think that she's
tying it to that.
To that.
She supported it.
So I would say.
So
we'll cross her off.
I think. Well, yeah. Do we cross her off because she is doing it? But is it just one that I watch?
Our final, then
that's true.
Then she would be one that I would just kind of keep on that.
Okay. And then Bree nailed it. Yeah, Brooklyn. She had two, but that were kind of off. But Bree said something in there that, like, of all the murdering, and that it brings how horrible situations can bring you together. And I was like, sure can.
Yes.
Blaze, yes. Lane was one that we were watching, and it says that so the people are taking stuff out of Mrs. Kim's store, and she's yelling at them in a different, or in her language, whatever that language would be, and the people are not responding that are stealing, and then he put the people are careless. And so, yeah, and then sleeping close to the wall, I infer that she doesn't want her kid to get hurt. And then share a dish of milk, that they like each other, because it talks about how the cats hated each other and they always fought, Mrs. Kim's cat and the little boy's cat, but then they get left in the building and the firefighters bring them back, and they get left together, and it says in there that when the firefighter found them, they were holding paws, and then at the place that they evacuated to, the cats shared a dish of milk, and so he inferred that they finally like each other. Yeah. So still a watch like Lainey, but he did it. Gavin Redinger, I don't know. He asked a question and asked another question. Leave your clothes on and sleep next to the wall because maybe a fire, question mark. and so he would not be hurt. So, so the not be
That-
hurt part is, when they broke the building and laughed, they do not have any care. Because they broke into a building and were laughing. It said that there were sounds laughing like they'd never heard before, and so he's assuming that they just don't care. So for him, considering he wouldn't write anything down, so he at least wrote 4 things down.
Nice. I mean, that's then, progress. He's growing, probably not where we want him to be, but definitely on the right track.
So I wouldn't say, well, he did infer, so he did what we asked, but.
Not as deep as some of them,
Right.
but that's,
And
like we
then
say.
Brooklyn is kind of along the same lines as him. She asked a question and then made a connection, and then it says, take shoes off but leave clothes on to make sleep. Take shoes off but leave clothes on, make sleep next to the wall. When I read Smoky Night, it made me think that she told him to do that stuff because she wants him safe. Yes. She's always making me lie down. I inferred that the reason he always has to lie down is to keep him safe. And like a breeze, when it says, Mama's always telling me to lie down, a breeze said she's making him lie down to make him play dead. So like totally different, but still an inference. So
And used specific.
right. So, but the ones that definitely don't from the others, the
Is
last
that
one that I
still
did
the ones
is
that we were
Sheldon,
watching?
Misty, Tyler,
Those are the ones I have down.
Gavin Redinger, Peyton still is definitely not. He can do it verbally, but so that's what another question I was going to ask you. He's inferred twice to me, but then what he doesn't write anything down, or what he writes down is not even close to that. So when we're looking at evidence, like he doesn't do it on paper, but he has done it twice with vocally. So
Right, and I mean, I think if that's a different, something else we have to work on with him is getting it down
to paper,
on
yeah.
the paper. But is he able to use the details?
Mm-hmm.
So, and make an inference.
Mm-hmm.
So then I would say this piece, yes, he has that.
It's
We
just
just have to
putting it to
really work.
paper.
That's another.
So then he would be one that we'd want to watch. But
Okay.
other than that, I think that right now, like 19 out of 24 have done it. So, yeah, considering the first day was like 0%.
We accepted it was a little raw. Okay. Okay. So now, just some questions. So,
Okay.
like, there's nothing really to look at. Just thinking. So, thinking about the process
Mm-hmm.
and what we've kind of done together and working through the coaching cycle.
Mm-hmm.
I guess first maybe celebrations or things that you feel went well.
But 19 of them are
That's a
inferring.
big
When
sign.
zero weren't in the beginning. And then, like, I think on a couple of these, I just put huge smiley faces because they were actually, I've, like, really been pushing to, like, name, like, other strategies that they're using. And 3 of them, like, put, it's not an inference, but I had a connection to, and I was like, so they're, like, taking it, like, yeah, their task was to infer, but, like, I tell them, like, Mrs. Kroll, is it okay if I write down a connection? Yes, like you're still you're tracking your thinking. And so on a breeze, she goes, I know this isn't an inference, but I know this isn't an inference, but I have a connection. When my cat died, other people were trying to make me feel better, like in the book. And so it was just kind of cute.
And
So
that plays
that
into her background knowledge.
Right.
Into making that, okay.
So the fact that they were using and naming other strategies, not just focusing on inferring, because as a reader you don't just do that anyhow. I'm only going to infer today. Like, they were writing stuff down. That was a celebration. Not copying from their friend. Like they broke off from, like when we would share in a large group. One of their classmates would have like an inference, and then everybody would immediately start writing. You know. So they were starting to do it independently away from myself and their peers. Hi. He's like,
Oh, I don't want to go. So where do you feel your kids excelled the most? I mean, you kind of mentioned a few things. Where do you feel like they really...
Pulling out text clues. Like, all of them are able, like, all 24, even, like, Misty, who's just, it's been impossible. She can at least, like, paraphrase something from the text, so they're all able to pull out some type of text clue, which, so she's searching for it. It's just, she doesn't have a lot of background knowledge. She doesn't really know how to use it. So it's really just pushing her to, like, connect to her thinking, you know. Yeah.
Okay. How did you, as the classroom teacher, benefit from the coaching cycle?
It made me more reflective, and, like, I found that I was using, like, moments of the day, like after specials, when normally they would come in and I would just, like, read aloud, or they would work on something that they had started, or a project that they hadn't completed before, and instead of doing, like, more independent work during that time, and, like, it was more purposeful, so I found that I was using more of the, like, literally every moment, like, bell work, I was tying it to something with reading a time for kids and trying to find text clues, or, you know, so I just felt like it was more, that sounds terrible, but I was using the time more in the day. And just, like, even looking at student work, like, just how powerful it is to have, I mean, even if there's just, like, 5 things written down, but what it tells you about them as a reader. So taking the time to sort it and to the yes, no's, maybes, and just really giving me the ability to, like, focus in on those kids that are right there, you know, or whatever. It just became very clear where they were at.
And you kind of have mentioned a few things, but what do you see the benefit to your kids? I mean, you had mentioned, like, recognizing and naming other strategies, being a little more independent in their thinking. Anything else?
Like, we were reading science the other day, and a couple of them came up to me and asked, Mrs. Kroll, is it okay if I do the T-chart? Like, meaning this, and I was like, sure you can. You think so? They're using, like, the tools to help them make more sense of their reading. And then, like, I don't know, they all just seem more active in their reading, like, using stickies or doing the T-chart, but almost sometimes it makes me think, like, they are wondering if I'm going to make them do it eventually, so they want to get a jump start on it, but then I don't, and so then they do it anyhow, and it's like, oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So I think that they've just become more active.
Okay. Now kind of jumping back to, like, the work that you and I have done together, of the things that we did as far as coaching practice, what things did you find the most beneficial or most useful or helpful? Like, whether it was me being in the classroom or the planning piece or some of that thinking time that we
All
had.
of the above. Yeah. Just being able to sit and, like, think my think alouds through with you, and like, really have it, the mini lessons that I was going to do, like, very focused and specific to, even to being like a 10 to 15 minute mini lesson, but that was so powerful, like the day that we did the text features, the text features one, and they had it, they just needed the refresher. And then also having you come in and, like, being able to jump in and say it, like, a little different way, or just having another set of eyes on kids that I need to watch. And really the planning too. Like, it was nice to have someone to bounce off ideas and, like, what text was working and what wasn't, and where to go from there. And
okay. Sorry, the cheat sheet. You talked a little bit about this before, and maybe that was enough, but talk to me about the benefit of using the student work to, to drive what you did in your instruction.
Like my mini lessons, I feel like were more powerful, like whether it was with the large group or a small group of kids, or even just going and sitting next to a kid when they were free reading, and just being able to have a conversation with them. Like if I wouldn't have been looking at it so often, because the kids were like changing out of yes, maybe, no's, like so much, like sometimes they went backwards and sometimes they made huge gains. And so if I wouldn't have been looking at it, like it really changed from like my lesson plans from day to day, just because of how much the progress that they were making.
Okay. What might be some things as we're wrapping up, but kind of been thinking forward. I know you've talked about coming back to this and, giving it some time to kind of settle and then come back. But what are some ways maybe that we could build knowledge, or do you have any like things that you resource-wise or things that we could do to help build?
Well, we talked about doing that book study with that book that Angela had the last time. It says here, I can't think was it Mosaic?
The Thinking.
Yes, that one.
The Mosaic of Thought.
Is it?
She had two, the Mosaic of Thought and then the Ways of Thinking with the kid on the, was it the chalkboard one on the front, or was it Mosaic of Thought?
I think it was Mosaic.
That's the one we used when she was talking about inferring that she looked
versus,
through with that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And informational versus fictional text, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So just like that, and then we had talked about like using fiction versus poetry versus nonfiction text, like the textbook. So maybe like in the next round, trying something different, like only using song lyrics or poetry, or just giving them the opportunity to, because maybe it was too difficult to infer nonfiction first, because nonfiction is meant to be factual,
That piece too. Okay,
so
that helps.
And then just like, I'm gonna miss like the planning part, like just being able to sit and bounce ideas back and forth, like that was powerful for me. So does that answer your question? Okay.
So as you look ahead, even for your kids, what's your kind of future goal for them? You kind of alluded some of that, like using different types of text, different genres.
And like now we've started just like kind of going backwards a little bit, because some of the kids that are struggling with it, like simply just aren't writing anything down. Like it makes me wonder if they aren't aware of like their inner voice, or that as a reader we ask ourselves questions, we make connections as we go. Like I think that for some of them, just reading the text is such a task. So maybe taking time to just slow down a little bit, back up a little bit, and just start looking at, hey, you made a connection there, and that's something that good readers do. Or, and just maybe going backwards with the text a little bit with them, and using easier text that isn't maybe directly related to the content, just to get them to realize that they're thinking when they're reading, and or help teach them to think while they're reading. Because I think that some of them just might not be. They're trying to decode still so much.
Okay. In addition, maybe to that background knowledge piece, like Misty, was that an easier spot or something that she had more background knowledge with?
Yeah.
What she might be able to do.
Well, and the other kids just like, we'd even talked about how with every text clue they don't have to have an inference. They can use like a couple of text clues to make an inference. That's a big lesson that I would like to do after we set for a little bit, that come back and be like, hey, remember when we were inferring? Well, now let's take a couple of inferences, or a couple of text clues, and put those together, or even all of the text clues and make one giant like.
That makes sense. We had that conversation.
Yeah,
times.
with the
I just want to let you go
that
there.
bubble sheet, remember?
Yeah. Okay. Biggest challenge. Or things that we could do to make it better. besides time and,
Right.
you know, that's kind of
I think it was a challenge to start. Inferring is such a big concept as a reader. Like, maybe just I should have backed up the train a little bit, like, which we did by putting in those lessons. It would have failed. It would have been a flop if we wouldn't have stopped and gone back and looked at text clues and just talked about inner voice a little bit, you know. So I think the biggest challenge was just simply starting with inferring and not reviewing some of the previous strategies that they needed to get to this piece, like looking at just pulling out text clues and looking at being aware of their background knowledge, you know. And then just finding text that even they could just all read, you know. Maybe next time I don't need to do it like that, where they're reading the same text. Maybe I need to do it more small groups so that those, because I have such a broad span of reading levels, you know, that made it hard to find, because like maybe Sheldon, especially Sheldon, he can read, but maybe the text that I was giving was just, he only had time to read, let alone try to pull out text clues and pull out and make inferences.
Sure. Mine would have been probably like just being able to wrap this. I feel like we kind of, like this last little bit, we've pretty drug you along, and so
That's okay.
next time I promise we'll do it better. Any other ideas on like the coaching piece and how to make that better, or more efficient, or more?
Your teacher doesn't even know where you are?
We were so busy that it was just, there's so much going on, so just having that time, it was nice when we met after school and like there's nobody interrupting, no kids coming in, wondering where they're going, you know, just having that time to just have a conversation. Because sometimes it felt like we would just get started and really get into the meat of it, and then, you know, it's like, really? Time's over.
Perfect.
Anything else? Any other lingering thoughts or things that?
I don't think so. It just made me way more aware of what I was doing every minute. It really did.
Every minute, like
Every
yeah.
minute. Every minute. Pulling a kid, whether it was at bell work just for 5 minutes just to sit with them, that was just how much I got from that, you know?
Talk to me about that, like hearing you say that, you know, and knowing that time is such a big thing, and to me it sounds like you're using more time.
Probably. Which makes
But
me
does it
like
feel like
guilty.
it? Well,
No.
but I don't think, I think that you're not the only one. I don't think you're alone in
Yeah.
that. So I just, you know, knowing, like I said, I think I hear you saying that you're actually doing more in the time that you have.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like, you know, do you feel like you're giving up time, or that you're losing because you spend more time being? Does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah, it
My
totally
question
makes
is very
sense.
clear.
Like, are you saying,
You know, time.
like,
is
I was
such-
using that time, like what I would have normally been using it for? Was it more beneficial using it for the coaching stuff? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and the time that you're using, you know, you say I use every bell minute, whereas if it wasn't being used efficiently, or you know, like you're saying, oh, I didn't even almost realize that I had that time.
I did not realize how much I could do in that time, and that, you know, like the other stuff at the moment I thought was important, but then when we were putting some of these lessons in, I realized how much more important like that 10-minute text clue lesson was, and then doing the 15 minutes of text features, like how much more powerful that was than what I had originally had planned that day, you know?
And that's,
Does that
I
make
think
sense?
it does, and that's, I think that you see the power in using that time efficiently versus, you know, like I said, I think time is such that issue.
Well,
such
and
an
then we
issue
talked
where
about,
I don't have enough. I don't have
yes,
enough.
but you do have more than you think you do.
Mm-hmm.
And then like we have talked so much about giving them that choice in the afternoons, which really freed me up to be able to do like small group work, and you know, like instead of doing the set rounds where they just, here's your tasks and at 3:30, you know, just how powerful that was in giving.
Explain that. What was the change?
So before, like I was, so we'd like use daily 5 in the afternoons, and I was giving them, like I had grouped them according to different strategies or whatever the case may have been, and like I had color coded on the starboard, like their first round would be orange would be here, and then orange would go here next, and then orange would go here, and then I just scratched that and I put all the tasks on the board and just let them choose their task. And like then I told them that I might pull you from that, and I thought that would be a disaster and that they wouldn't get their work done if I was just randomly pulling kids at different times. And it was not. Like, it has been the most amazing thing that I've done so far, and like the work that I'm getting back from the kids is like 50 times better, like that, because some of them might have been starting in a round that they didn't really want to do, and so then letting them get the other stuff out of the way that they wanted to do, and then coming back to that when they were ready. Like, I wasn't getting just subpar work from that round because they were forced to do it at that time. The work that they were turning in when they chose to do that round, like, was so much better. But that was like also really hard to give up. Like,
It is. I know.
very,
Letting it go is
yeah,
hard.
like you have to get, everybody has to get these 3 things done.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna do it,
I'm
like,
gonna trust you.
and I'm gonna let you. Yeah.
But see, and look at
It did work, and it's still working, and I won't do it any different ever again. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else?
I don't think so.
Good. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
How can, or if do you even think it's possible for you to help other teachers understand the power of this work? Like, what might that look like for you, or is that something you don't feel comfortable, answer
I would
honestly.
totally feel comfortable. It has like changed my classroom management at the beginning of the school year. Like, afternoons were so stressful because I have a block from 12:30 to 3:30 with no break, and so the kids, like, after the first hour, it was like pulling teeth to get them to keep going, and then by just taking myself out of it and just giving them the choice, and this is what you have 3 hours to do it, and this is what I'm expecting, and like watching them, like some of them read for 20 minutes first, and maybe that's what they needed after recess, was just to calm instead of jumping in and doing like science activities or whatever. And so I would love like to talk to some of the other teachers about like how just giving them choice can clear up a lot of management, a lot of behavior things, because they know they have to get it done, and then they get to choose like when and where they do that,
Mm-hmm.
And so it was
Like collaboration.
well, and even if
What
like,
would that look like?
well, Emily like has come in and watched and realized like, oh, from 1 to 2 she was doing science, to and then like seeing like 5 kids might be working on science, 4 might be on social studies, 19 might be reading around the room. That was really hard to let go, like that they were all in so many different places, but it made like my mini lessons more powerful. And like, so some of the kids might start science before they've had the science mini lesson for that day, and so then they had so much to add into the conversation during my mini lesson,
Mm-hmm.
and were able to like be leaders themselves with that task with some of their other peers. And so it just really, like, the collaboration in the classroom with each other is so much higher. And
What was
I really-
Emily's like response after she came in and observed her?
well, first, like, they're all doing different things. I know. That was like really hard to get my head around. Some days I walk in and I'm like, yeah, they are all doing different things. But she's like, it's silent. Like, it usually is. They're working. Or if it is, if there is some sound, like, I don't even notice it anymore because the kids they've chose that task, and so the conversations that they're having, they're wanting to have. And so she just talked about how, like, I haven't had really any behavior problems in the afternoon just because they're choosing what they're doing. And so
So you're willing to have somebody, like, people wanted to come and watch and see what it looked like as far as structure and that kind of thing.
yeah, because it's hard to explain, like, well, I do a 15-minute lesson and then they work for 25, or, you know.
So being able to see it in action is probably.
And maybe even just talking to some of the kids and see their opinion on it and their view of how it works and how it doesn't. And because the first few weeks was, but now that they've practiced it and had the opportunity to do it, it's working.
And what about engaging with Jen in a coaching cycle? You're obviously a really reflective learner. Not everybody's as eager to jump into something new like this coaching cycle work. Like, how, if you were standing in front of your staff and you had a, what would you say to people, or how could you envision spreading the word so to help other people understand the power of this kind of collaboration?
Like, I think that I think I've always been pretty reflective, but I'm even more reflective now, like, and just truly using the little, I mean, this took 20 minutes and just how much I can get from the 20 minutes. And so, and just having someone to, like, I feel like all the lessons that we planned together were so much more powerful because I almost practiced them first with you. And just having someone to, like, share ideas with, someone, like, she would come in and, like, if I felt myself kind of maybe stumbling or not getting the right words out, she could jump in and then I'd be like, yes, what she said, like, and so just it just really felt like the time was much more powerful on a day-to-day.
Do you think that sharing it small group, like if we did it like during a collaboration time, or a bigger group would give you
it took a lot of time, and so that's the part that, like, I gave up. And I say gave up because that's how I feel like they might look at it, because just even people in my hallway, like, you didn't have any planning time this week, so how did you get your plans done? Well, you make it work. And we didn't sit down and say, like, from 2 to 2:20 you'll do this, so I knew what I was doing every week, but giving up that time was so much more powerful than sitting at my desk and planning by myself, just because the conversations that we had and the resources that, like, she could pull, maybe that I don't have time to go get, she could bring in. And so then I guess I don't really, unless you are in it and are willing to give up that time and be willing to have her come in and jump in and, like, not be offended, or feel like that you're not doing, the spotlight's not on you, because she did jump in a few times, and just being okay with someone jumping in. And so I don't know how you would, I think that they might have such an idea of already have an idea of what coaching is, that they are like,
so we're gonna have to work on a plan of how to share that, to share it with them, and what that looks like. Has anybody else asked about it? I mean, I know Emily has. Has anybody else?
Well, Alicia, but
about it. Okay.
No, outside of that, like, it was more of like, you go meet with her how many times? Like,
you're crazy.
Yeah. So it was more. That's a really good question of how to spin it positively, because.
How we can, how we can share it, and how you can talk about the impact that it's had. Because I think clearly you saw it in your kids, and
by far.
So that's something to let kind of float around. Your downtime off a break. That's something together. Talk about it too. Yeah.
The power of hearing you say, though, right? You gave up your time, but really, it sounds like it was making your time better spent.
Oh,
So maybe trying to help how to help people see that, because for sure that's not uncommon. Like I don't have the time to give up to work with you, but really you're not giving up time. You're gaining more by collaborating.
well, and then it instead of just teaching social studies and just teaching science, like we were using some of the social studies and science to do the inferencing lessons. I mean, so really taking it cross-curricular, and I just really felt like my time. And now, like when I plan by myself, like I'm looking at where can I teach reading within this, because right now we're working on explorers, and so being able to cross between and pull the reading strategies into what I'm already doing, so that I'm not like, well, when are you going to teach social studies? Well, I'm teaching it. Like it just doesn't look the same.
Do you think that, or do you see that it carries through, like even now when you're planning with Emily, has that started to kind of be a talk? No? Okay.
No.
Do you think it potentially could though? Like as we go through and you continue to work and share what you've done?
I think that she I think so. I think that she would be willing. It's just, you have to really be willing to like step back and trust that your kids can do what's asked of them. And so at first when they were all working around on their own things and I didn't have like a set group in front of me, I was like, now what do I do? You know? But then,
It's a weird feeling.
yeah. And so I think it's hard because, well, do you have a lot of missing work? No. They know they have 25 minutes, and so then I know that what I plan in that 25 minutes, they have to, you know, it has to be reasonable that they can complete it. And so it's just, I feel like I really have to like be specific. Instead of reading an entire section, they might just read 2 pages and do a task. So I don't know. And maybe they don't read every single page. Whereas I think she is more along, they have to read the entire chapter 3 and do the chapter review, you know, where it's not necessarily some of the conversations that they had instead were more than a chapter review could get from them. So, I don't know.
Thank you
All right.
so very, very much for being my